Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. And with that, I'm going to open the floor for nominations for board chair. Is there a nomination?
This is Mike. I'd like to nominate Jeff Clark to be board chair.
Is there a second to that nomination?
I can second that.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, can I get a motion to close nominations?
So moved, Mike.
I can second that.
Okay, all in favor of closing nominations?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all in favor then? Right, no one was opposed? I'm just giving people a minute, so sorry. All right, all in favor? And then all those in favor of Jeff Clark as board chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? Okay, congratulations, Jeff.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to open the floor for nominations for board vice chair.
I'll nominate Oliver Davis.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
That was Todd Z, right?
Sure.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, can I get a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor of closing nominations, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. And then all those in favor of Oliver Davis as board vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, congratulations, Oliver. I'll now turn the meeting over to Jeff.
And thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for your support and confidence. Thank you. All right. The first item is public comment. Is there any? I don't see any general public, but is there any public comment? Okay. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. Acceptance of the appointments to fill Board of Finance alternate through 3/31/26. Mike, it's my understanding from our recent conversation that there'll be a candidate at the February 6th meeting.
Yeah, they couldn't attend tonight, so yeah, I thought it was more appropriate to wait till they could be here.
Okay, thank you. Acceptance of the November 14th, 2023 minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the November 14th, 2023 minutes.
For a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion about the minutes? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'm going to abstain. Jeff, I wasn't there.
Okay, anyone else abstaining? Okay. So motion carries. All right, okay, communication and correspondence. A couple of things that I want to just share. There is a new business manager on the Board of Education. I think I would have written her name down, Mary Heine. So I had a chance to meet her at in December. And I had some email communication with the town clerk around the status of people who were elected being sworn in. And that's it. Does anyone else have communication that they wish to report? No? one other thing, I guess under communication, we all received the Board of Ed minutes and committee meetings and all, and I just want to congratulate Bob Paskowitz, who's on the call. He was elected as board chair for the year at the recent meeting, so congrats, Bob.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, and that brings us to new business. The first item is the review of the audit report. Earlier this afternoon, I passed around presentation that Mahoney Sable will go through, as well as the audit documents, but I'll turn it over to Mike and the Mahoney team.
All right, well, thank you very much. Again, my name is Mike Van Deventer, and I'm a partner at Mahoney Sable, ultimately responsible for overseeing the audit and issuing the reports on behalf of the firm. Joining me this evening is Heather Seatman. Heather is a supervisor at the firm, and she was ultimately responsible for really the day-to-day execution of our audit procedure. So happy to be here this evening to present the town's fiscal year 2023 audit results. As Jeff mentioned, there are a number of reports that were provided today. I'm sure you may not have had a chance to go through them in any sort of detail. The presentation that I will take you through will really provide an overview of what we did, any significant audit findings that we had, provide some overall financial highlights, and certainly can answer any questions as we go along. So I am going to attempt to share my screen and then pull up the presentation. And right now, Kelly, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Eden, is that something that you're on mute?
Okay, I shouldn't be in charge of this, but I am. Okay. For share screen, I just say multiple participants can share simultaneously.
Is there an option just for me?
Yeah, it says one participant can share at a time, and that's already clicked.
Okay. It still says host disabled participant share screen.
Let's see. I'll unclick it. Oops. Anything?
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Just went through. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. As far as the scope of work, again, we did perform an audit of the town's financial statements. We performed that audit in accordance with both the auditing standards issued by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, as well as the government auditing standards issued by the Government Accountability Office. In addition, based on the level of funding that was received and expended by the town, we did perform both federal and state single audits. We also perform an agreed upon procedures engagement on the end of school year reports that are required to be filed by the school district with the State of Connecticut Department of Education. In addition to those attest services, we do perform some non-audit services for the town. So we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, the schedule of federal awards and state financial assistance and related notes. We also assist in converting your governmental fund financial statements to your government-wide financial statements. In addition, we do also assist in the preparation of certain trial balances for some of your special revenue funds, which are currently not maintained on an accounting system. In order for the firm to be independent and be able to perform these services, management is ultimately responsible to oversee these services and accept responsibility for them. Again, Kelly is the treasurer and Ray is the business manager, have accepted responsibility for those services. In connection with the audit, we do issue a number of reports. The main report is the report on the financial statements. We did issue unmodified opinions on the town's financial statements. Again, an unmodified opinion is expressed when we've concluded that the financial statements have been presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States, and that is as established by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. I do like to point out that our opinion only provides reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from a material misstatement, whether due to error or fraud. We do not provide absolute assurance. We do not test every transaction. There are estimates that are included in the financial statements, and therefore we cannot provide absolute assurance. In addition to the report on the financial statements, we do issue a report on compliance and on internal control over financial reporting. In this report, we do not actually express an opinion on the town's compliance with laws and regulations or on the effectiveness of the town's internal controls. Essentially, during the course of performing our audit procedures, if we identify or become aware of a material non-compliance with laws and regulations or a significant deficiency or material weakness in your internal controls, we are required to include it in this report. Again, we do not report any such matters. In connection with the federal single audit, we issue a report on compliance at the federal award level. In this report, we do actually express an opinion on the town's compliance with its major federal programs. For fiscal year 2023, the total federal awards expended by the town was about $1.5 million. The major program was the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. We did issue unmodified opinions on your compliance over that program. And again, we did not report any internal control deficiencies over compliance. We issue a similar report in connection with the state single audit. For fiscal year 2023, the total state financial assistance received and expended by the town was about $3.4 million. Approximately $1.6 million was considered non-exempt and subject to our compliance testing. The major programs for the town were the Town Aid Road Grant and the Open Choice Funds. Again, we did issue unmodified opinion on compliance, and we did not report any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control over compliance. So again, in terms of the overall reporting, it was clean for the town. In terms of the compliance reporting, the primary compliance requirement that we are testing is allowable costs. So again, you're using the funds for allowable purposes under those major federal and state programs. This next section goes over your financial highlights. And again, there's a lot of financial information that's included in the financial statements. Certainly, to the extent we identified anything of significance or concern, we would include it in these communications. The first slide goes over your general fund budgetary highlights. The original budget did contemplate the use of fund balance in the amount of $852,000 to balance your revenues and expenditures. No additional appropriations from fund balance were authorized during the year. Your actual change in fund balance was a decrease of about $139,000. So that did result in an overall favorable budgetary variance of about $713,000. So you plan to use the $852,000 and you only used $139,000. That surplus was driven by a revenue in other financing sources, which were $442,000 more than budgeted. That was primarily building permits, conveyance taxes, as well as the interest income associated with the historic increase in interest rates. And then overall expenditures were about $271,000 less than budgeted. This slide goes over your governmental fund financial highlights. This includes all of the town special revenue, capital project funds, as well as your general fund. The town is reporting a combined ending fund balance as of June 30th, 2023 of approximately $12 million. That was a decrease of about $389,000 from the prior year. Of the $12 million in fund balance, about $4.4 million is in your general fund. That was a decrease of about $54,000 from the prior year. Of that, $732,000 had been assigned for use in your fiscal year 2024 budget. Your unassigned fund balance was about 3.4 million, and that represents about 13.1 or just over 1.5 months of your fiscal year 2024 budgetary expenditure appropriations. And again, these reserves do not include any reserves that you hold within your capital funds or your town aid road grant fund. The Town Aid Road Grant Fund has a fund balance of about 2.3 million. That was an increase of about 912,000 from the prior year. Again, those amounts are statutorily restricted for road maintenance and improvements. And then all of the other funds of the town are combined into one column in the financial statements called Other Governmental Funds. They reported combined ending fund balances of about 5.3 million. That was a decrease of about 1.2 million from the prior year. All of those amounts are either restricted or committed for specific programs or purposes. The town continues to report a deficit fund balance in the sewer use fund. That deficit was about 730,000 as of June 30th, 2023. There was an increase in the deficit of about 135,000 from the prior year. So again, I know that's a continued discussion and continued issue that the board is dealing with. From an audit perspective, again, we'd like to see a formal plan for addressing the deficit, be evaluated and monitored on a continuous basis. This last section goes over our required communications. And again, we do issue a governance letter, and so that governance letter does include these communications as well. The first item here talks about our responsibility under our auditing standards. Although we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, we do perform some of those non-attest services. They are the responsibility of management. It's our responsibility to perform our audit procedures and express our opinion on those financial statements. I'm happy to report that there were no changes in the overall scope of work that was originally agreed upon. And the timing of the audit did occur when we had initially planned. In terms of significant audit findings, typically we'll point out any new accounting standards that may have been implemented by the town. Again, no new accounting standards were implemented that had a significant impact on the financial statements. The financial statements do include some significant estimates and judgments. Those primarily consist of estimated useful lives that are assigned to capital assets, as well as discount rates that are utilized to determine the school district's total OPEB liability. We did review those estimates. We did deem them reasonable and consistent with what other municipalities are utilizing. I'm happy to report that there were no significant difficulties encountered in performing the audit. We had no uncorrected misstatements, so any audit adjustments that were identified have been proposed and have been incorporated into the financial statements. We had no disagreements with management during the audit process. We did obtain a management representation letter. Again, no uncommon representations were requested. I always give board members the example, if we selected a transaction for testing and we were unable to substantiate it, and we were relying on the representation of management, we would inform you as the board charged with governance. And we were not aware of any management consultation with any other independent accountants. We did also issue a management recommendation letter. Again, this is consistent with prior years. The majority of the matters are prior year matters that we've carried forward in the current year. Those consist of maintaining all funds in the accounting system. Again, I know the town has purchased a new accounting system. It's being implemented in fiscal year 24. And so hopefully that new system will ultimately allow the town to address this recommendation. We continue to recommend that the town perform a fraud risk assessment process. Although we do consider fraud as part of the audit process, we are looking for potential material fraud. Again, the town could be exposed to fraud that may not be material to its financial statements. A fraud risk assessment process would be really a process in which management would review each of the accounting areas and identify potential for fraud, and then ultimately identify controls that can be in place to address those risks. Accuracy of information reported in the e-grants management system. Again, we did have some issues with the information that was reported in the e-grants management system with the State of Connecticut Department of Education and the information that was included in the school district's general ledger. Again, we've had more significant issues in the past. This year was much better. However, we still had some issues and there's still some room for improvement. So we will certainly have that discussion with the new business manager at the Board of Ed as well in advance of closing out the fiscal year 2024 reports with the state. And then we did have a comment about formalizing a procurement policy as well as identifying key differences between the town's policies and the uniform guidance. I know we talked about a policy last year. I don't think anything was ever formally approved. So again, we do continue to recommend that you formalize your procurement policy and then also really kind of summarize the differences between the town's procurement policy and the uniform guidance, which is required to be followed whenever you are spending federal awards. And then a couple of current year matters that we're recommending is the identification of capital assets. The town does a very good job at identifying new capital assets, tangible assets such as vehicles, equipment, those sorts of things. We do assist and kind of identify some of the infrastructure related assets to put on the capital asset listing. So again, our recommendation is really that the town assume that responsibility and as part of the closing process, identify those infrastructure and other assets rather than just vehicles and equipment. And then the last matter that we had for a recommendation is increasing your purchasing documentation. So going along with the procurement policy, there is a lot of focus on documentation related to compliance with procurement. And so we did provide a potential template that could be utilized by the town so that you're actually documenting your compliance with those requirements, and that documentation is being included with the overall purchasing documentation for a transaction. So again, I know there's lots of information there. We do have a separate letter that kind of summarizes all of this. Ultimately, these are things that, hopefully management will be able to address. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions that any of the board members may have.
Mike, I don't have any questions. I want to thank you. I appreciate the overview you provided us. Very thorough.
Thank you, Mike.
Sure. And again,
questions.
If you do have any questions, once you had a chance to go through all the material, so it's a lot of reading. Happy to answer those questions at any point in time. I would just ask that you filter those through Kelly or Jeff.
So Jeff, I apologize. I don't have it written down in front of me, but was there a policy or something that we wanted Mike's input on while we had him at this meeting, or am I misremembering that?
There definitely was a draft purchasing policy, but I don't feel like I have crisp in my mind what we wanted to ask him. But Mike, suffice it to say, we did have a draft at one time. I think we had some questions for you, and I think we got sidetracked to other priorities.
Sure, and I understand that, and you're running into budget season as well again. So, if this is something that you want to take up kind of after the budget process, happy to get involved. That my schedule kind of lightens up at that point in time as well.
Yeah, this is Mike, I think that would be very, something we could put on the agenda for one of the next meetings, just so we don't lose track of it, because this kind of flows from year to year pretty quickly. But anyway, we had some pretty robust conversations about the parameters which we wanted to consist in, but I think it'd be good to kind of submit to Mike and then get some feedback and maybe revisit it before we get into capital in the fall.
Yeah.
When we circle back.
I agree.
Mahoney Sable, Mike. I did send out the procurement form that you gave to Kelly to give to me, or gave to both of us actually. And I am having all the department heads using that. There just haven't been any purchases.
Yeah.
that
Yep.
met that. But we're kind of doing a test drive with it. So it seems to be like the document's great. I didn't realize the Board of Finance didn't have that. I can share that with them?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
All right.
I had one more question before we wrap up. This is Mike again. I have a. So you talked about basically some sort of financial protections built in to review what's going on. What can you put any color on that? How what that would look like, or what it looks like in other towns that you do?
You're referring to the fraud risk assessment process?
Yeah. Right. I hate the word fraud. So yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's a recommendation. It's a best practice. This is a recommendation that I probably provide to all of my municipalities. It's not it's a little bit of a heavy lift. I know certain towns have looked to kind of hire like a consultant to come in and do that for them. Although they've had difficulties finding, those consultants. So, my recommendation would be ultimately for, the finance department or the treasurer's department to kind of maybe map out the different accounting processes and then come up with a timeline just to kind of go through that. And it could be something that's done over a couple of years. It's not something that has to be done tomorrow. But it is something where you would kind of identify. So, for example, the recreation department. What could happen within the recreation department that could result in fraud, even though it may not be material to the overall town's financial statements. So again, we may not look at it from an audit perspective because we've deemed it not to be material. But you, as a town, should probably have documentation to say, hey, yeah, we've looked at this process, we've considered, where there could be fraud, and these are the, procedures that we have maybe put in place to address that risk.
The reason I ask is not to step on multiple toes at the same time here, but my understanding is at the Board of Ed level, they did, I don't know if the Board of Ed did or if it was internal management, they did incorporate some of that. And one of the solutions was to eliminate like cash transactions. I think we had discussed that in previous year at one point. Yep. But they eliminated some of that stuff and they went with a vendor that what ended up happening is it really limited some of their abilities. So do you see the general outcome of something like this to be very restrictive to the point where it limits use? Is there it seems like right.
No, and again, from my perspective, you're not looking to eliminate everything, right? Because if you try to eliminate everything, then you make it very restrictive and it becomes a really administrative burden. Right. The thought is just to be more aware. And if you identify, a process where you can say, hey, we can easily implement this control here. It's not an administrative burden. It's worth it. Let's do that and address that risk. As opposed to, hey, this is going to, cause a lot of administrative burden costs. Again, the cost of internal controls should not outweigh the benefit of them.
Yeah. So I guess I'll wrap it up with this. Have you seen towns implement what you're suggesting in a successful way? And
no, as I said, again, I think I probably have this recommendation on every, single one of my municipalities. And again, it's, I know the municipalities have limited resources and limited time availability. Right. But again, it is something that, I think you should consider. Again, you don't have to look at everything, but maybe you look at a couple of areas each year. That would be my overall recommendation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mike? All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're all welcome to listen to the rest, but I imagine you've got other things to do.
We'll sign off. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, the next item is for the Board of Ed. Just looking for an update. I know that there was some discussion at our last meeting about the closeout of the middle high school, which was an older state project, and I think there's been some movement in that regard. So I was wondering if Missy or Bob, you will update us.
Sure. We have a meeting tomorrow evening with the HVAC Building Committee to review a draft report for the roof project for the middle school, high school. The other three projects, which are longstanding, it's the Seymour project, the All Grove project, and they designate it separately as a Board of Ed. All three of those projects have been moved to audit. So at least those three are in audit. We have a draft report for the roof project. We will be reviewing it at the subcommittee tomorrow night and then signing out on the acceptance. And then the town should expect, it appears to be somewhere around the dollar amount, about $332,000 owed to the town.
Wow.
And that's from the middle school, high school roof project from 2019 completion.
Doesn't seem like that long ago, does it?
Time is a funny thing.
Yeah. Any questions for Missy about that? That's great news. Question for Kelly. Kelly, do you know offhand if that money returns, to go into a specific fund, or does it go to the general fund? You know?
It should go back to the general fund, but we can go back to the original motion to be sure, but typically that would close back out to the general.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Okay. The next item is to discuss budget drivers with the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education. Why don't we, Missy, just go ahead and hear what you guys have.
Okay, you can hear what I have. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the budget drivers for the Board of Education, I feel like a little bit of a broken record. They don't change from year to year. They're pretty much the same budget drivers in any district with a school district. We are looking at our certified salaries, our non-certified salaries. Overall, the salaries make up the largest piece of the pie, so to speak. Our group and health insurance, transportation. We have tuition costs. It's called private and public tuition. Sometimes it's misunderstood in terms of what we're paying for. Public education is anything that we have an agreement, any districts we have an agreement with, such as our VOAG, any of the magnet programs, tech ed. Private tuition is aligned with our students with disabilities, and if there are children whose needs are better met in a specialized program, that's the private school tuition. We have utilities and fuel, and then what we call our special service line. Those are all of our consultants, again, primarily aligned to special education. That would include any consultants we need for occupational therapy, physical therapy, perhaps a specialist in area of speech and language. There's times we have psychiatrists come in to do assessments on children. So that's what we call our 330 line. I think what I'd like to spend some time on right now, and I'm going to be very candid in my in what I'm sharing. I'm going to spiral back a year ago, and we spoke of the use of grants. We spoke of the use of our open choice grants. We spoke about reallocation of our health benefits. A year ago, we started with a 1 year, like a +1, we call it. Let's take everything, roll it over 1 year. We were at a 7.1 was our starting point. We were able to meet a 3.99. That was done with a cumulative allocation of $1.4 million in salaries being paid for out of grants. Again, primarily our open choice grant. I'm going to give a little bit of a lesson on open choice grant. These are our children that join us every day from Hartford. It is a tuition-based grant. We are able to use the funding in any way that deems most appropriate for our district and to support our children. Last year, because we were able to roll over the grant, we always hold some rollover amount because we utilize that funds not only for salaries, but if we do get children in district that were not budgeted for. So when we plan for special education, our Director of Student Services, Karen Gogel, does an excellent job. We budget for the services and needs of current children. We have no way of budgeting for children in needs that we don't have yet in district. So should something change mid-year, or we have a family that moves in with some needs, we are able to utilize that open choice grant as well. We've also utilized it if needed for some facilities or unexpected, costs to the district. Last year, in order to meet the 3.99, we rolled over about $600,000 and we utilized current year budget. So for next year, and I will quote, last year I shared that most importantly would be the sustainability for the 24-25 school year. And we need to decrease grant-funded personnel and return the percentage of those salaries to the operating budget. That's exactly where we are. 2 years ago, we predicted it. Last year, we emphasized it. And we are in this year exactly where we thought we would be in terms of the need. So what am I talking about? A +1 rollover. We did add one position of a school psychologist. We are looking at about a 10.7% with a +1. We have spent a lot of time with our administrative staff. We looked at all areas of our budget, and we would need, aside from other line items, we would also probably need to look at a reduction of about 12 personnel to get to about a 5%. So again, are we looking at that much of an increase this year? No, what we're looking at is no longer the use of the grants that we have put year after year after year, more and more salaries in. So where we had 1.4 last year, we have about 800,000, give or take, for this coming year in salaries. We are also looking at other items such as, being able to decrease a bus run. We're looking at healthcare again, utilities. So we're doing a lot of work, but the big concern and the big factor will be the personnel. But again, this is not a surprise. We're exactly where we forecasted we would be 2 years ago. We have been extremely, I feel, fiscally responsible. Since 2016, minus this current year, we've averaged a 2.38% increase. We work really hard during the course of the year to find grants to take off our capital list or to be able to return funds to the town, but we are at that saturation point right now. And we're not saying that's what we're going to come in asking, but that's what we're working from.
Yeah. Questions for Missy?
Well, I guess I'd just like to.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'd like to just thank you, Missy, for that. And you have a tough job, and we get it. So I look forward to seeing what you bring.
We're going to do our best.
Are there any items, any contracts coming up? I forget where we are with the labor contracts.
No, we've settled, actually, we were really close with our non-cert, our teacher union, our administrative union. We're good for another 2 to 3 years. We just did admin. Teachers, I think, was last year, same time as our non-cert.
Okay.
The other piece is I am not aware of any retirement. So typically we can do a bit of a swing because, you retire at a top end of a scale. higher, a little lower. I am not aware at this point of any retirements, and typically I would know. It doesn't mean that it can't happen. You know, it's a blessing and a curse. We say all the time, you know, and when teachers come to East Granby, they come to stay. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Other questions for Missy?
Not so much a question, but just another thing that we want to keep in mind, Missy, as there's never a good time to be concerned with having to, you know, increase budgets in order to come up with cash that we've depended on for grants. But this is also the revaluation year, and that's going to be a challenging year to deal with both of those items at the same time, right? So I just want to make sure that we're being mindful of that, and to say we're going to have to work together to come to some sort of balance that takes that into consideration, as well as what the Board of Ed needs. So as always, anything that can be pushed to a subsequent year is something that we're going to have serious consideration for.
Yeah,
So
I am aware of that. Thank you. Yes,
Yep.
but you know, again, I just wanted to emphasize that this is exactly what we predicted. This is not a surprise. So it's a matter of kind of recalling where we were a couple years when we shared, you know, kind of the risk of putting more and more salaries into grants. We knew we wouldn't be able to sustain it. But but thank you for that, Oliver. And yes, absolutely, we're going to certainly do our best to do what we always do and provide a great education. I will not allow the quality of our programming to decrease. We are a comprehensive high school, and we need to remain that way, but we are absolutely looking at some creative ways. But that's a big cliff.
Nope, I understand. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments for Missy? All right, thank you. All right, okay, general government. I don't know if that's going to be Jay or Newton talking us through drivers.
Yeah, I can take it, Jeff. So we provided a preliminary listing of budget drivers. And just starting out is our ARPA funding that we currently have staff that's being paid by ARPA, roughly 5, both full-time and part-time. And that's going to be expiring June 30th, 2024. We may have some extensions possible, depending upon work requirements. So we've got some decisions there as far as, you know, the staffing and how we're going to handle each one of those situations, Eden and I. And we're actually going to be sitting down and talking with, you know, some of the folks impacted in the next couple of weeks. Next, we have salaries. We have 2 union contracts, town and DPW, that expire on 7/1/2024. The police expire back on 7/1/2023. We do have a preliminary agreement in place, but retro pay is owed back to 7/1/2023. Public buildings, we have a town custodian out on disability, and his return is not known. So we may have, you know, to fund a custodian, but we're not quite sure in terms of how that's going to play out. As far as fire department, inclusion of maintenance and equipment spend, less than $5K from capital funds. So what we're going to do is we're going to be bringing that back into town budget, as we talked about. And I'm working with Troy on that. He's provided me with his best thinking on a town budget for FY25 that I'm going to be, you know, putting into my numbers and looking at that carefully. Police, we had an additional officer to our forecast back in October. That was not in the FY24 budget. It's currently in the forecast, and that officer, you know, will be taking into FY25. And that's, I believe, the 8th officer we have in town. Next, we have a records management part-time position for the police department in accordance with state of Connecticut accreditation requirements. This is something we have to do, and we're in the process right now of scoping out that position and figuring it out, from a budgetary standpoint. Next, we have DPW. The cost of fuel could be a driver if costs trend upward. And that's pretty much boilerplate year after year after year. Insurance increases from carriers, always a possibility. I'm going to be reaching out to our carriers in the next couple of weeks so that we can get some estimates as far as what our costs look like in FY25. And last but not least is the contingency fund. And what we want to do is restore our contingency fund back to $54K, which would be an increase of $23,100. That's a preliminary listing at this time, but we see those as being our drivers presently. Any questions?
Are you aware of any mandates or any other help from the federal or state government?
Not to my knowledge. Eden, to you?
For the police administrator, we're looking at certain grants for that. Hopefully we'll be able to find something. There's a COPS grant. It stands for something. So we're looking at that. I mean, we just applied today for a grant for the Playscape, actually. So we're keeping our fingers crossed on that one. That has to do with that a bit still. We are looking at everything that we possibly can. So, because the police admin is a mandate, and so they are trying to offer some sort of help. We've heard so.
Do we know, Jay, I don't know if when you've looked at this from a modeling perspective, percentage-wise, what all of these drivers would add up to?
I have a very rough number in place right now. I mean, very preliminary.
Understood.
And right now, it's looking greater than 6% all in. But again, this is a very, very rough number.
Yep. Yeah. And I would provide the same feedback that I did to the Board of Ed of that this is going to be an above average challenging year when we look at the reevaluation impact on what the average citizen is going to see for an increase in taxes. So again, anything that can be postponed, we may have to look at postponing, and I'm sure there'll be some sort of compromise that we'll all have to reach to find something that folks can agree to. Thank you.
Welcome.
Or anyone else with questions for Jay or Eden? All right, thank you. And we'll be at our February 6th meeting, we'll be getting a lot of the detail. Okay. All right, the next item is request information from the Board of Ed regarding non-educational costs. I guess we formally requested, so we'll see it sometime soon. Okay. The 5-year financial model. Let's see, I sent that out. What do I want to say about the 5-year financial model? I guess, first of all, I mean, especially for Todd, who's new, I'll just point out there is a first page on there that talks about how to actually read it and use it. So I encourage you to look at that. Really, the model that was sent out was updated with the pre-audit financials as well as the state budget, as all that stuff came out last year. Mike in his presentation had talked about we used less of the fund balance in 23 than we had planned. And some of that we knew about. At least the parts that were driven by higher revenue, that's already in the model. So, but that's the tool that, board members, you can use. You can go ahead and put in there, what if there was a 10% increase on Board of Ed and a 6% or whatever number you want, and figure out, really what's the interplay between, what mill rate would support that and what does that increase, or what if we spend down the general fund, what can we tolerate? So you can, become informed on your own about what those impacts are and how, inform your vote. So let me just pause there for a second. Are there other questions? And the other thing about the revaluation year, I don't know who all's been around from the last one, but in the best case, you can have a zero-sum game. I think most properties around, residential properties went up. I don't think commercials did. And then within residential properties, some neighborhoods went up more than others. So you could have a flat budget year over year, and some people's taxes will go up, some will go down. So what we try to do is minimize the impact, especially on the people who's going to go up through no fault of their own. So hopefully we'll be in a position to reduce the mill rate, but reduce mill rate for sure on a higher valuation doesn't always work out for people. So
I would just say, Jeff, I think this is a unique circumstance, right? I don't think we've ever seen property values increase as much as they have in such a short period of time between reevaluations. So this is going to be, I think, unique in that regard. So it's great that property values have gone up so much, but now there's going to be consequences when it comes time to looking at what the reevaluation tells us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, to me, Oliver, I've been through a few of these, but the large increase actually, from my perspective, gives you a little bit more flexibility because you can come down substantially more on the mill rate, and that brings us back because we always were one of the lower mill rates in the Farmington Valley, and we've kind of crept our way up because we hadn't had the revaluation recently. But this will give us the opportunity to get us back into the realm of respectable. And so it's a double-edged sword. There's a lot more revenue. If we didn't touch the mill rate, we could build it. The revenue coming in would be dramatically higher. So it gives us the opportunity to more robustly reduce the mill rate. You follow me?
Oh, I do. And I agree it's going to be a good thing to be able to reduce the mill rate. My concern is that the net impact on what the taxpayer pays is going to be larger even with a reduced mill rate.
Right. Net dollar. But I think from a policy standpoint, it gives us a little more flexibility, which I think is useful. What we present to the public, in other words, we're going to be presenting a mill rate reduction of X percentage, right? As opposed to always creeping our way up between, so it might be a good year to look at funding some of these things when the narrative looks better and getting the revenue where we need it. So I'm not saying that I'm an advocate for spending more money, but the point is that from a narrative standpoint, it looks better when you're decreasing the mill rate substantially and yet still increasing the funding to the programs that are kind of coming to the end of their road. But we'll have this discussion a lot in the next few months.
Right.
So.
Nope. Agreed.
Okay. Anything else about the financial model? If anybody's looking at it and have questions, you want to reach out, I'm happy to spend a few minutes with you. All right, the next item is municipal grants and aid closeout, which Kelly, we haven't talked to him all, but you had asked me to put this on, and then here it is, and I'm not sure if I gave you a heads up or not.
Yes, I saw it on there. Thank you. So just for the benefit of folks that may not be familiar with the municipal grants and aid, it is a grant we get from the state. I think Jeff did send out in the materials what the state statute does require that the grant monies are spent on. And essentially it's related to roads. So once a year, the select woman is able to submit a form to OPM to possibly use some of those funds for something that is not related to roads, for example, a police car. The state then approves or doesn't approve the funds and sends it back. So what happens is each year, any of those items that the state approved to be used for non-roads is spent out of capital. The money I'm looking to transfer now, this is something I do pretty much every year. In the example of the police car, let's say there was $60,000 that was supposed to be spent on a police car, but we only ended up spending $55,000. We take that additional $5,000 that's remaining, and we need to move it back over to Town Aid Road Fund so that we can certify to the state that all monies from that grant are used on roads that weren't intended to use for the other approved items. So that's all that this is. This is looking to close out fiscal year 22 and 23. All items that were approved by the state are finalized. And so the remaining funds are $35,244. So I'd be looking for a motion to transfer $35,244 of fiscal year 22 and 23 municipal grants and aid funds from the capital fund to the Town Aid Road Fund.
So moved. I think, do I have to make the motion, or can I just echo what you just said?
No, you can just echo it.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or any questions for Kelly? Okay.
Chatty Board of Finance group there tonight, Jeff.
I know.
Nobody has
I'm looking to see, I do think in the capital plan we have an amount that we expect to transfer. I'm just curious what we... Doesn't look like we had anything in this year, in a budget anyway. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, monthly reports. Financial. Kelly, since you were on, you want to start with the treasurer's report?
Sure. Okay, let's see. For December, Jeff, I made those adjustments, bringing those financial reports back. I did it for the general fund and the capital fund. So those look very similar.
Yes, thank you.
As recall, we're using our new software system, so I'm doing just those two manually, and then the other reports are just a direct printout from our CSA system. So
Great.
it was pretty quiet. As you can see, some of the tax revenues coming in. A lot of people like to pay their taxes before the end of the year. Interest continues to be very strong. That was for the general fund. Nothing really happening in the capital fund. That's exciting. Missy updated us on the school fund. Roofs and roads was also quiet. You can see the new breakout on the ARPA fund. If you guys want me to adjust that at all, just let me know. any of the other reports that are spitting out from CSA. They pretty much cover the same items, but that's about it. It was a pretty quiet month in December.
So I have a question. Can I ask a question, Jeff?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the accounting program that you're using now, is that, I didn't want to grill Mike too much. Is that sufficient to comply with what their recommendation is, do you feel?
For which recommendation, Mike? Sorry.
You can have an accounting program in place he had made a recommendation. I'd have to pull it back up. There was a recommendation.
There is one that, are you talking about like putting some of the funds that are not in the ledger system in?
I think the exact bullet point he said was maintaining all funds in the accounting system.
Yes. So I did have that discussion with Mike Mike from Mahoney Sable, prior to us actually implementing CSA. We both agreed, as I kind of went through trying to look at how that would look and how that would work. So it sounds nice, but logistically, when we have some round funds in different departments that have the ability to cut checks for instructors quickly and things like that, it was not as simple as it sounded. So Mike and I both agreed that we'd kind of get up and running with the general fund and the funds that we currently had in our old system, get that up and running, see how that works for a little while, and then maybe talk about whether it's feasible to do that.
He did reference the fact that you had incorporated a new fund. I just didn't want to get into the weeds with him about how much that reflected his recommendation. But it sounds
absolutely. And I did, because that's actually been a recommendation for a long time, where like special state funds, those are outside, and those, commingle with the Board of Ed. So there's just some logistic stuff that's not that easy if we put it all on the general ledger system. And again, I did discuss that with Mike, and we both agreed that to just get up and running at that point, it wouldn't have been a good idea to try and bring everything on. It's not to say we can't bring it on. This system is really great. So
it sounds like a manpower almost issue. Like it's if somebody sit down and put all this. I run businesses, right? And if you had somebody calculate every little expenditure, it would get pretty rough. But just getting back to how do we account for, because today is the day we talk about the auditor's report. How do we account for all of our expenditures? Is it like you say to put them into the accounting system would be cumbersome to get it up and running, right? Every little check that's written to every little person. How do we account for all of that? Do we have a spreadsheet or a checkbook or what?
So just to be clear, Mike, all our major funds, the general fund, the capital fund, the town aid road, all of those funds are on the system. The funds that he's talking about are like the Park and Rec Round Fund, the Board of Ed special state funds, so they're the smaller funds that are kind of sub-accounts. They all are, and those have very limited transactions. So yes, some of those are just physical checks. The special state funds from the Board of Ed do run through our accounting software system. They're just not accounted for on there. So the checks are run out of the Board of Ed. They actually, I misspoke. It's not the town system. It's the Board of Ed system. So, some of these things are, that's on Munis, but then we, coordinate with Rosalie, who's my assistant treasurer, handles it kind of on pen and paper on her side, so to speak, Excel spreadsheet. But
but just I'll end my questions now, but just one last one. So I'll take a general fund, like say you have your planning and zoning, right? You have a budget. They're writing checks for stuff like pencils. Where is that actually recorded? Is that they have their own like checkbook, or they have their own account, or how?
So if it's a department, like the building department, so they have their own budget line. And then, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say any department. It could be the general government has probably the biggest fund, right? In terms of just like or Public Works, they have to write a check for somebody that brings in a new screwdriver. Is that where is that accessible for somebody to review?
All on the general ledger system. All the general fund, every department that falls under the general fund, which is kind of what you're saying, planning and zoning, building, selectman's office, treasurer's office, all of that is under the current accounting software system.
So you could literally print a report that says like I do for my business, every expenditure for the last month.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mike, with the, if I might just interject, the new CSA system, what we can do is we can click into a line code and we can look at all the expenses for a given month. And Christy, our accounts manager, she runs a check register report that I check periodically during the month, which essentially lists all the cash disbursements by line. So the DPW, the planning and zoning, that's the beauty of this new CSA system. I have the optics right at my fingertips. I can log onto that system, and if I see monthly spend in a certain department higher than I anticipated that it would be, I can click on all the different codes to see what the spend is. So it's more proactive now versus reactive.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Kelly? All right. We take these one at a time or all together and see it. We
All
take we'll do a
together.
motion
I
for
think
all
we
of
do it all
Okay.
at once, right? At the end.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Jay, you want to give us the general government budget report?
Sure. So, actuals through December 2023, we're roughly 49% spent, 6 months of actuals, 6 months of forecast. And if you look at a full year, if you look at the full year forecast by line, right now we're running approximately 60 to 70K under budget. We have one unfavorable, big unfavorable variance, and that's in the police line. And that's for an unbudgeted police officer, salary, benefits, and policing expenses. Plus, what we had to do also is we had to pull some retro spend and park it in June because we're going to have to go back with our new, the new negotiations that have taken place for the union contract. And once it's ratified, we're going to have to go back to July and we're going to have to pay at that new rate. So what I did is I parked that spend also into the forecast. And that's approximately 105K over budget for the reasons that I just stated. That coupled with favorable variances in the other lines, and you could see that in the financial forecast that I provided, that gives us approximately 60 to 70K favorable right now, as compared to the annual budget of $5,434,000. So again, we're halfway in, 6 months in, 49% spent. And right now, again, when you look at all the lines, we have the one which I consider to be significant, and that's the police, running $105,000 over budget from a full-year forecast standpoint, offset by the other lines which are favorable. Obviously, we've gotten a lot of snow lately, but again, as far as our forecast is concerned, we build into our forecast that we're going to get a lot of snow and Ed's going to do a lot of plowing. So that's captured in our forecast as well. So that's the update for December.
Okay. Any questions for Jay?
I don't have it in front of me. What is the landfill line looking like?
The landfill line, the RCC?
Yeah.
Okay. Hang on 1 second, okay? It's got to reference my report.
I was trying to pull it up, but I'm working.
Are you asking me because of the remediation?
The remediation, yeah, primarily that was a pretty big hit. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were given permission from OPM, Office of Policy Management, that we could use,
Promenade Road.
road aid, yeah. Yeah, because it's transportation related.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ed's not crazy about it, but he's been very great working with us. So yeah, we all came to that agreement. So we're pretty happy about that.
So minus that, we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, but it's
Yes, overall.
coming out of the budget, so that'll be good.
Well, the other question with the dump with the tipping fees had gone substantially up. I just haven't followed the narrative on that. Are they kind of back into the norm? Have they stopped it going up dramatically?
Yes, because we locked into a contract for 5 years. So
Thank you.
yeah.
In permits so far, we've collected approximately $64,000 on a budget of $75K. So that's tracking pretty well.
Good.
other questions? All right, let's go to Board of Ed.
Okay, thank you. And Jeff, thanks for recognizing Mary Heine. We do have our new business manager, so this is the first report that she will be providing to the Board of Finance.
Okay, thank you. So I sent everybody the financials on Friday, so we do have them. They're pretty much the same as what they were in November. We have the same issues with the healthcare budget, Object 210. We expect that to be balanced once the end of the year because we apply the employee contributions to that line. Bus fuel, it's a little slight increase from the first quote that we locked in. And Object 521, our liability insurance, our share came a little bit higher than anticipated. But all in all, it's pretty much no different from November. Nothing that stands out. Any questions?
Welcome aboard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, welcome. Any questions for Mary? All right, can I have a motion to accept the 3 reports?
I'll make a motion to accept the reports as presented.
I'll second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, anybody opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. All right, building committee. Mike, anything to report?
Yeah, we're going to meet tomorrow night. Nothing dramatic. Missy kind of hit the highlights on that, so I'll kind of. But we're reviewing an audit for the school roof tomorrow night, which should be wrap that one up. But no, it's been not a lot of road paving. But other than that, we're right on target. Everything's well within budget. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions for Mike? All right, and then BOE budget representative. Do we have any activity in that regard?
No.
Well, Todd joined us for our budget workshop earlier.
All right.
Yeah, Missy did a great job covering what was discussed.
Okay.
We're meeting again next week too, I believe, right, Missy? The 24th?
24th, yes, I'll get you the time.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
All right. Any questions for Todd? All right, is there any public comment? All right, that brings us to adjourn. Is there a motion?
We'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second, Mike.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstention? All right, we'll see everybody February 6th.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Right.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.